Hello, my friends. This is Anderson Thiago, your host speaking. Welcome back to Wave of Metal podcast. This is episode 5. We started the day listening to Manacle Fight for Your Life from the album No Fear to Persevere. But this is not good news because I read this morning that Manacle split up. They were supposed to play the Milwaukee Bash Spring and they canceled the gig because the band is no more. I hope that they come back sooner than later because their soul album was fucking good. I also chose them because they relate to one of our guests for today. He played on the record, although he was not on the band anymore. It's a sad thing when bands with such potential decide to call it quits, but we don't know what happened, so we can say more about this. But I hope that the guys on the band continue making music because they have talent and they know how to write songs. Talking about positive things now, 2019 is being an unreal year for traditional heavy metal releases. It's absolutely mind-blowing how many good albums we have each month. And Ride Into Glory, my favorite website, they just published an article called Best of Traditional Heavy Metal from January to March 2019. So if you want to know what you should listen, go and read the article by Ride Into Glory. And subscribe to New Wave of Traditional Heavy Metal Full Albums on YouTube to check the albums that the guys may have missed on their list. If you follow me on social media, you noticed that yesterday I posted a t-shirt design on Facebook and Instagram, and I would like to thank you so much for the reaction, for the feedback. I wasn't expecting such a positive response from you guys. Many people wanting to buy the t-shirt now. I still don't have a date for production, but I will do the things as fast as I can because I was amazed by your reaction. The design was amazing. It was made by Daniel Porta. He goes on Instagram by @thepitforge. You should check him out. He already made cover arts for many bands, and his style is perfect for the new wave of traditional heavy metal bands, or traditional heavy metal bands in general. Daniel Porta, the Pit Forge, I can't thank him enough for what's he been doing for me. He did my first logo for free, and now we are working together to make these t-shirts, and there's more coming. If you need an artwork for your demo, your EP, your full length, contact @thepitforge on Instagram and you'll see how cool looking are his designs. In other news, the channel will need to go a little bit slower in coming months because I finally got a part-time job as a mailman, delivery man. It won't pay much, but will be something. I will work 2 days a week. I don't know how many hours because it depends on the amount of deliveries that I have to make. And also my mother will be visiting from Brazil, so things will go a little slower on the channel. So if you requested something, I apologize in advance. And I also be going to keep it true, so while you have some days that I will not be able to check the channel as much as I do, I also have to organize the channel a little better because since the beginning of the year, the amount of requests and bands wanting to be on the channel, and with the releases that are coming out one after another, I have been spending time with the channel as much as I would do in a regular job. I love what I do on the channel, and I love that my work is being recognized by many bands and many people in the music heavy metal business, but I have a family and I need to prioritize certain things And the best way to start is to organize better. So there will be some changes on the way that I do things here, but not much, and the channel is not gonna stop. Just one thing before I start the interview, I need to give a shout out to my new patrons. Marco from Riding to Glory, thank you Marco for your contribution, and Mo Ryder from the band Hornado from Germany. They are releasing their second album called Supersonic Punch, and it's going to be available on the channel very soon. But don't forget, if you like it, buy the album. Our guests for today's episode are from a Canadian epic heavy metal band. They released a demo last year called The Sword Woman, and now they are about to release their first full-length album called Times of Obscene Evil and Wild Daring via Cruz Del Sur Music. Today we are talking with Sarah Ann, Vincent, and Adam from Smolder.
Hey.
Hello.
Thanks for having us.
We are recording this on March 23rd, and the album has been up for pre-order since yesterday, and it's going good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going really good. We put the physical pre-orders up yesterday. The digital's been available for pre-order for the last few weeks, but yeah, we're kind of blown away by how much attention that we're getting. It's really exciting.
The Die Hard edition, the gold vinyl, it's sold out?
Yeah, so the thing is that Cruz Del Sur is, the way that we have our deal set up is that we can sell to our North American fans and they sell to the rest of the world. So we got a set number of the gold edition, and basically we just wanted to make it into something, collectors want. We know that the album artwork in particular, people really love it. So we put together a gold special package of, the gold vinyl and a t-shirt and a patch and a pin, and it sold out pretty much immediately, which was really cool.
And I think I was one of the first persons not involved in the making of the new album to actually listen to the whole thing. I couldn't believe how good it sounded in the first audition, and like I told you, it's my favorite release of 2019 so far. How happy are you with Times of Obscene Evil and Wild Daring?
Oh, how happy! I'm personally really thrilled. It's we wanted better production, we wanted better recording. Altogether, we wanted an album that sounded timeless, and personally, I think all of us are really happy with the record. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm always saying that I just feel really lucky to have joined the band when I did and to be able to be a part of the recording of that record. I'm really excited to be a part of this band.
It was quite a leap of faith from Sarah to send the album to the owner of a YouTube channel specializing in posting full albums of heavy metal bands.
Well, I mean, I think I trusted you. I mean, there's it's one of those things. I feel like just given that we kind of play in that realm, and there's definitely a popularity rise of traditional heavy metal right now, I just thought you would be a perfect fit to send it along to. And I feel like your curation is quite strong. So I knew that if you didn't like it, that there was something wrong with it.
But it was difficult because I have some friends, and we have a Discord chat room, kind of a forum, and I was talking about the album with them, but nobody had listened to the album except for me, so it was kind of when you read a book and you have nobody to talk about it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for causing such difficulty.
But thanks for hyping it up.
Yeah, that's really cool of you.
They were troubled times of high deeds and feats of learning, times of obscene evil and wild daring. This is a direct quote from one of Michael Moorcock's books. But what's the story behind the album title?
I actually got it from the short story The Greater Conqueror from Michael Moorcock. One of the books I have of his short stories, there was one of them included in there. I was reading the short story, and I really liked that quote. It stuck out to me, and I was going to use it as like something, you know. It had to be used because I liked it a lot. And when I suggested it to the guys, they all liked it. So yeah.
Yeah, Shon brought it up. He had it in his, I think it was just a note in his cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
And when it came to recording, we didn't really want to name the album after a track on the album, just because we felt like, because most of the tracks have very specific stories, we wanted the album title to have more of a feel. And I think that line just ended up being a really good summation of the fact that there's mysticism and magic and evil.
Yeah, and also because the album cover itself, there's no song in the album that references like the album cover, so it didn't make sense to name the album after a song. The album cover didn't match up with it, so the next album maybe we'll have a song that's about it. But
yeah. We'll see.
I knew the album title was inspired by a work of fantasy literature, but I also had my doubts if it has a second intention to it, referring to our own times of Obscene evil and Wild.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say that lyrically and from a title perspective, I think everything, there's double entendres. We don't really explicitly talk about what they are, simply because I think it's important for listeners and people who care about lyrics to be able to extrapolate their own meaning and to kind of assign their own meaning. But that being said, I very much think that it's a reference to our very troubled socio-political climate and to our very fractured socio-political climate. So altogether, the album certainly does have very specific meanings that I, as the lyricist, and Shon, Vincent, as one of the lyricists, have attached to it. So trying not to be too vague, but I also don't want to be too specific, if that makes sense.
Sarah, you said in an interview to Decibel that the demo will be likely the only release written by Vincent and me. We are now a fully functioning band. So how was the writing process for the album?
It was great, actually. Colin and Kevin, they played on the demo. They're old friends of ours. We actually went to Frost and Fire with them a couple of years ago. And when we went to Frost and Fire to go see Sira Thungal, we were talking about, getting our band truly together. The band started out, it was Shon and myself. I was on drums. He was on guitars and vocals. And we just were kind of slogging away, and we couldn't find serious members. And we really wanted to make the band go somewhere or do something. And we eventually moved to Toronto. And moving to Toronto, we kind of said, okay, like, it's now or never. We're going to do this band. And if we're going to do this band, we're going to do it properly. So we got Colin and Kevin to play on the demo. And the demo got way more attention than I think any of us were ever anticipating. It kind of exploded. And after that, we kind of thought, okay, it's time to, start actually writing everything and having a fully functioning band. Like, we don't want to operate our band like a dictatorship. We want it to be, a fun thing that we all enjoy doing. Mm-hmm. So when it came to writing the record, Colin and Kevin had tracks that they had written as well. And we just started all throwing everything into a pile and kind of figuring out what that looked like.
Yeah. Yeah, Alien of Garethorm and Bastard Steel were the two tracks that they contributed, fully. They just had these songs fully written that they intended to use for a different project of theirs, but they thought they would fit much better with Smolder, so we did that. And as for the other songs, they were mostly already all written. I think Shadowy Sisterhood and Blackout's Kiss were the last two to come together before we recorded them. So
yeah, but it's funny because a few people have noted that, oh well, it seems like this got put together quickly after the demo, and that's just not true.
Yeah, definitely not.
We've all been writing for a long time. We're all very experienced artists and musicians, and so we kind of have engineered everything to come out. We wanted the album to come out a year after the demo, and even with how we recorded and everything, it's pretty much the exact same process as the demo because we recorded the demo in September of 2017?
It was
or October.
Yeah.
2017, we recorded the demo. It came out in April 2018. October 2018, we recorded the album. It's now coming out in April.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's been interesting. We all write together a lot, and we'll send each other song ideas. And Shon took Bastard Steel, and I think that there were sections that you rewrote.
Yeah,
and
we
reorganized
slowed it down a little bit, and added that intro in. And then with Black God's Kiss, that song actually almost ended up on the demo. But the original version I had written of it was much slower and maybe about 13 minutes long instead of the 10. So the album version is a little more, has more of a power metal edge, I guess.
Slightly.
Yeah.
It's our Reverend Bizarre
Slightly
track.
faster. But yeah, we didn't have time to record it on the demo because those 3 tracks that we did, we recorded it in one 8-hour session. So adding a 13-minute long song into it just wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
Well, so when Vincent and Sarah moved to Toronto, I've been living in Toronto for years and years, and go to lots of the metal shows here, and I've been a metalhead for years and years, and so on. So because they're always going to the shows, we ended up becoming friends and hanging out the odd time, being part of the scene together. And about a year later is when Sarah had texted me one day and said, "Hey, do you know any bass players who love epic doom metal?" And of course I just said, "Yeah, me." Send me the songs, I'll learn them. And it was a week or two later that we started jamming together, and I just did my best to learn all the songs as best as I could. Because I knew I wanted to be a part of it. When I heard those demo tracks, I guess I got to hear the demo before it was released because I ended up playing the release party.
Yeah.
And that was, I was immediately really excited to be part of this project, which means, all those songs on the album, they'd all been written before I joined the band. But in the future, going forward, I'm really excited to hopefully contribute some of the songwriting as well. I've got a couple songs in the works. So.
He shouldn't say hopefully. He's already contributing.
Okay, I've got some riffs, and
You're our friend.
I think they like my riffs, but it'll go into. They'll all get thrown into the same blender where I say, "Here's a song I've written," and then everyone can add their own ideas and contribute their own criticisms and so on, give me feedback. But I'm really looking forward to doing that and getting some writing contributions on future releases. It's going to be really exciting.
Adam's also a really fucking good bassist and is very witty, so him being in the band is great. Mm-hmm. He gives a shit all the time.
So if you ever listen to this podcast, I always feature some songs by the artist that is invited. So what do you think if we listen to the first track of the album, Alien of Garatorn, right now?
Sure. Yeah, let's do it.
Let's go. Alien of Garatorn by Smolder. Arthur Risk from Eternal Champion and Summerlands produced Times of Obscene Evil and Why Daring. If we highlight the two re-recorded songs from the demo, the difference in terms of production is quite noticeable. How important were his inputs to the final product?
Well, I mean, I think that the demo has demo production. So when it came to kind of figuring out how to fill out our sound and have that kind of like a better production and grandiosity, I do think it is important. I mean, obviously the number one most important thing is the songwriting and is the music. And I think that, you know, we have that. But to get us to the next level, we definitely needed much better production. Arthur has a resume that speaks for itself. He's great to work with. And not only that, but he had suggestions for us. And when he suggested certain things, we'd be like, hell no, versus other things where we'd say, yeah, that's a great idea. So for example, the first time around, he made the drums really boomy and we weren't into that. So we said we want a more organic, natural sound. And he went to that and it was like, okay, great. Like he always met us in the middle with everything. He's great to work with. He himself is a very experienced musician. So I think that he knows what he's doing. Like there's a reason why every band in the entire world right now wants to work with him. And not only that, but he was very generous with his time and altogether just, yeah, he did absolutely everything that we wanted. I was the one who insisted that he do the mixing and mastering on the record just because I felt like, you know, we needed to kind of harness the interest that the demo had. And altogether, I have had a few told you so moments with the guys about it.
I mean, I definitely agreed with that though, because and even since recording and getting it mixed by Arthur and everything, you know, I go and listen to some of my favorite records from the last couple of years, and I just see his name on all of them. You know, the new Devil Master, the new Tomb Mold, in all right in all these different genres too. You know, he can mix death metal just as well as he does traditional and epic doom and all that stuff.
Black metal.
Yeah, I did that Pissgrave record, and that thing was like actually good war metal instead of garbage can war metal.
So yeah, really stoked that he worked on the Smolder record. It sounds really great.
And one of the key attributes to the album is Sarah's vocal delivery. Sarah, did you change anything on your vocal approach to record the new album?
Yeah, I think I just started, how do I put this? I knew that I was a decent singer, but I never really felt confident about it. I mean, like, since I was a child, I've, I was in theater, I've done lots of acting, I've sung at, like, things like my parents' vow renewal and, like, those types of things and talent shows, but I never felt confident about my voice, and I think that releasing the demo, having so much attention, and then, in particular, realizing that we were going to play this, like, massive festival, I finally started feeling confident in my voice and realizing that you sound better when you're not restraining yourself. So for me, at least, like, I really started kind of hamming it up in a lot of ways just because I thought that the more outrageous I got, the more comfortable I became with really giving it all. And so on the album, there was a couple tracks in particular that really stretched me to the limit. Black God Kiss is the most notable. That song was really hard to sing, and I did not feel confident about it for a long time. And then when we finally got it to the point where we were about to record, I don't know, I felt like something changed where I suddenly felt a lot more confident and comfortable in my own abilities. And also having, I think every member of the band is very talented, like being surrounded by these guys who are all very good musicians and strong songwriters in their own right was very validating. And so it just almost felt like I wanted to rise to meet them at their level, because they've all been in bands previously that have played shows and released albums, whereas all of my history is playing in shitty punk bands in basements and at house party shows as a drummer. So it really took kind of a shift in consciously validating myself, which is kind of silly to say, but it really helped.
I don't know how to explain this very well, but I noticed that sometimes you are singing in a very epic way, and sometimes your voice goes to more of an aggressive side. I don't know if I'm making sense here.
I think there's some moments where you sort of shout or snarl a bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like that just because it's more dynamic. You're not always just going for the same tone. There's, you know, more dynamic tones is always a good thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, the whole album is dynamic. Like, there's so much differentiation in speed, style, and sound, and I think that that's one thing that makes the album so robust is the fact that we have some mid-paced trad metal things. We've got some slow doom. We've got some speed metal. And, like, to have that kind of dynamic range, you need a vocalist with dynamic range. And I think one of the problems that epic metal often faces is that it's samey and doesn't go out of its comfort zone. And I think that going out of your comfort zone is like where real quality happens, and where you get things that people are like, oh, that's really cool, or oh, that's super memorable, because it doesn't sound exactly like everything else. Like Shadowy Sisterhood was like that a lot. I scream a lot in Shadowy Sisterhood, and there was a lot of things in that song specifically where I wanted to be telling a story, and like that track is about a witch who goes into the forest to learn how to kill another witch, and then she starts messing with the dark arts, and I felt like telling that story as she's like going insane and doing these terrible things made more sense from a differentiation aspect than just singing it the same as the rest of the song. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it worked out very well.
Vincent and Adam, how is Sarah when she's recording the vocals? Because she's the sweetest person, but when she sings Crush the Traitors and Revel in Their Cries, it seems like she's going to kill someone.
Yeah, she puts a lot of emotion into vocals, and definitely going from like her recording the demo to the album, there's a huge step up in her abilities. So yeah, when we were in the studio for the album, I don't really know how to explain it.
You know, most of the time I'm not scared because I know that Sarah's on my side. But, you know, you don't want to piss her off when she has a sword in her hand.
Luckily, there was no sword in the studio. But,
yeah. When we play live, you know, I've got to be careful because she's right next to me with a big sword, and if I make the wrong move, I might run through.
You're the one who dies last, Adam.
Oh, thank you. That's really sweet of you to say.
Another factor I want to mention is how easy on the ears the album sound. Let me explain it. I think it should appeal even for newcomers to the genre. It would be something I would recommend for someone who are into, let's say, trendy power metal and want to explore deepest dungeons.
Kind of you to say. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that was a deliberate choice. We just wanted it to sound clean and big and strong, but yeah, it's a trad metal record, I guess.
Yeah, credit to Arthur again. I think when we heard the mix of the guitars, especially, you know, on the demo, I know that Sarah's voice really stood out as oh, there's a really powerful singer in this band. But the band was just kind of there as the background for the singer. But then on the album, I know when I first heard some of the mixes with the guitar tone of these solos, that just sort of pierces through the clouds. You know, the whole band is there as part of it and on equal footing, sounding equally big and strong.
Yeah, that's really important. It actually kind of irritated me that a lot of people mentioned the vocals of the demo and didn't mention the instrumentation, just because I think that the instrumentation is fabulous, and I think it's strong, and like it makes me feel a lot of things. Obviously, I'm in the band, so that's obvious that should do that, but it needed to be credited more to everybody in the band. Vincent in particular, just him and I have been in the band since day one, and he is the driving force behind writing like the music itself. And I think that as a songwriter, he does not get enough validation and credit for his musical approach. I think that he's just a really strong songwriter. And I mean, accordingly, like Black God's Kiss is my favorite song on the record, and that one is entirely by him, lyrics included. And it's the same thing with Voyage of the Sun Chaser. I just find that song to be so dark and haunting and sad and beautiful. And he does the same thing in his solo project, Ezra Brooks. And I think Ezra Brooks is tragically underrated because it fucking rules, man. So
I uploaded the Ezra Brooks split with Emblem on the channel.
Nice.
Yeah.
Visions of
yeah,
Power.
And I like it a lot, the both sides of the split. But for my perspective, I think people talk more about the vocals because when you don't play anything, it's easier to talk about the vocals because good or bad, anyone can sing. Play the guitar, the bass, it's different.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. I think you definitely pay attention to different things depending on your own experience. Like,
Yeah.
like I don't imagine Sarah. Like, I don't imagine you would pay more attention to the guitars than you would vocals or something.
No, when I listen to something, I listen to the drums. Like, just coming from the drumming perspective. Like, and now as a singer, it's like I'm noticing the drums and the vocals the most myself. That is a bias though that people have, and it's one that I myself, I don't want to say suffered from, but I definitely affected like my perception of being the vocalist in this band, because having Shon as the vocalist for the first 5 years and just getting to the point where I was like, okay, like I should move over to vocals. I like the lyrics are coming from a feminine perspective. I am a strong singer. You know, this is what is benefiting the music. That was really hard to accept, just being the drummer and enjoying drumming and you know, all of the things that come with that. So yeah, I mean, it's really kind that people are noticing everything, but it's weird.
It's actually, it's always a pet peeve of mine. It's hard to avoid. I do it too. You know, I listen to the bass lines on albums a bit more closely probably than other people, but it's like, I always want to be listening to the whole piece of music and understanding how all the instruments are interacting with one another. I think that's actually what makes the songwriting in Smolder so strong is that it is about lines that complement one another. The bass lines aren't just repeating what the guitar plays and so on. And it's sort of a pet peeve of mine when I work with a musician who, you know, say you work with a drummer and you put on an album for them and they say, oh, I really only listen to the drums. That's all I really care about. So it always bothers me. I'm saying, you know, listen to everything. You've got to listen to how the whole song is put together to really understand it. But I get that people who don't play an instrument are going to have their own, you know, they bring their own experience to it. And yeah, maybe they do focus on vocals partly because of that. I guess that's fair.
I also think like everyone in Smolder has played more than one instrument. So I think that really helps for all of us in terms of writing, where all of us, we don't want the focus to just be on our performance. We want it to be on like two instruments or on, you know, more than what we're doing. And we want to make sure things complement each other. Like Vincent was bassist for a very long time.
Yeah,
and
like
so
all the previous bands I've been in, I've been playing bass. Like for the past 10 years, I've been primarily a bassist. So Smolder's the first band where I'm only playing guitar. So definitely when I listen to the album, the guitars are one of the things that I pay attention to the most. But yeah.
Yeah, but I also think that we appreciate Adam as a bassist because you're a really good bassist. And Vincent was a previous bassist like in Medical and in Gatecrasher and Chrome. And so like, you know, like getting to the point where, you know, writing all of those different elements. Yeah, there's a skill level there that is quite high.
and being a bass player and having a guitarist who actually cares what the bass is doing is really refreshing, really nice. Because you don't always get that in bands. You often get, just do whatever you want, it's fine, just follow the guitars, and then you get turned down in the mix anyhow. So it is definitely nice that all the instruments are equally respected in this band.
And you mentioned that Vincent was the original planned singer for Smolder before you made the change. But do you think it's possible to have a Smolder song on the next album or in the future with Vincent on vocals?
I don't see why not.
It's possible. Some songs might have parts. Yeah, I mean, on the album, like an Alien of Garethorn, we do backing vocal. I do backing vocals on the chorus along with Adam, and I actually did the laugh in Black God's Kiss, but that's obviously it's obviously pitch shifted to sound much more evil and sinister. But yeah, I think on future recordings.
I like the idea of doing some vocal harmonies. We could have a beautiful duet.
We're not doing any. We cannot do a goddamn. What are they called? Ballads. Okay. We can never have a ballad. I fucking hate ballads. No, stop. I hate this.
You like Scorpions well enough?
Yeah, this is different. It's sex rock. It's not shitty like Cinderella. You know. Don't know what you got till it's gone. It's got to be the differences like that. Yeah.
What I'm saying is I want my time in the spotlight.
Validate me. Vincent has been really busy singing, doing stuff for Ezra Brooks. Mm-hmm. So I think that there's that too. Like I don't think any of us have Smolder as our sole creative outlet. So we now and in the future, we do what benefits the songs most. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely not out of the question. And if something shows up in the future that it makes sense to do that, then we definitely will.
Yeah.
I think the strongest allegory that I can make is like we initially when I started singing in the band and was still playing the drums, like we really wanted to do it the way that Hammers of Misfortune did. And if you listen to the song by Hammers of Misfortune, The Bastard, that is one of my favorite songs.
The album.
Well, what's the song that?
An Oath Sworn in Hell.
An Oath Sworn in Hell. That's.
But I mean, all of Hammers of Misfortune albums have that sort of.
Yeah, but that particular track to me, like, it so well nails like this traveler who's singing with a witch. Like that's such a fucking cool.
In hell.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's such a good interplay, and so. There's definitely, it's very likely that we will do that in the future because all of our songs are that kind of thing.
If you're listening to this podcast, you just heard Sarah. When you go to your next Smolder concert, take your lighter with you. We will be back soon with Smolder, but now it's time to highlight some of the best albums I uploaded on the channel recently. And the first one is Hellfire, their new album called Mania via Riding Ease Records. And we also uploaded CX Fallout Rituals, released by Shadow Kingdom Records, speed metal for fans of Exciter, Agent Steel, and many more speed metal bands. We also uploaded two kind of unknown and new bands. They are Varkan from the United States and the self-titled album, and power metal Timorn from the UK and their album Store. But I don't upload only full lengths, and we had an EP by Savager called Headless Rides, and we also had a single by Metal Raider called Iron Forge. And Metal Raider is a new project by Mikalis Hinakakis. He's the former singer of Air Raid. He sang on their EP and the first album. And we had a new demo by Ezra Brooks. It's a side project by Vincent from Smolder. and you should check it out. It's totally different from Smolder, but it's really good. I also feature some videos, official videos by War Dress from Germany and Burning from the Netherlands. And we also premiered some official tracks, promo tracks from upcoming releases. We had tracks from Altar of Oblivion, Blazing Stone, and Vulture's Vengeance. And we interviewed Oscar and Harry from Ran, the Swedish heavy metal band Ran, and I talked to them in person recently, and I posted the interview. It's very nice. And I'll be uploading on YouTube the episode 3 of the podcast with Traveler from Canada, because I noticed when I was posting the episode 4 with Oliver when we talk about the Keep It True Festival that I haven't done the same thing to the episode 3 with Traveler. It was my mistake, but it will be available on YouTube soon. If you wish to contribute to the podcast and to the channel New Wave Traditional Heavy Metal Full Albums, you can do so by donating to our Patreon account. The link is on the description, and there's a few tiers there depending on how much you donate, and you get some rewards. It's not much because I cannot offer more than what I am already doing for heavy metal and for the bands. But any contribution will be deeply appreciated. Thank you so much, and let's continue with the podcast. The artwork for Times of Obscene Evil and Wide Daring is getting a lot of attention on social media. It couldn't be different with the gorgeous art of Michael Whelan. How did you end up commissioning one of his works?
That was me as well. I'm a big fantasy buff. I grew up in a household. My dad is a massive Robert E. Howard and Conan fan. Growing up, my dad had lots of Frazetta paintings in the office, and he's quite infamous for painting Conan specifically. Also, Eternal Champion, The Sea Witch. There's all these other paintings that he's done. But growing up with those, I really identified strongly with them. And when I eventually ended up spending about 8 months backpacking Europe in 2007 and going to a lot of museums and really falling in love with like Alfonso Mucha in particular. And I feel like discovering Whelan, it was just kind of the perfect merging of Alfonso Mucha and Frank Frazetta. And not only that, but like Whelan paints some truly powerful women. Frazetta didn't. They were usually like nude and submissive and or victims unless they were, commanding tigers. But I loved that we bought an art book one day at a used bookstore, and it was a Whelan art book, and I opened it, and the first time that I saw Well of Shuan, I just looked at it and I was like, that's going to be our album cover. It has to be. It's perfect. Like, it's just such a powerful image. Like this woman on a horse, like rearing up with that damn sword, like
Changeling.
Yeah, Changeling. And so we kind of like looked into what it had been used for, which was the Well of Shuan series. Bought the series, read it, all that stuff.
Yeah, the book.
Yeah. Well, it's 3 books, like the series. Like it was used on one book.
But, the Morgaine series.
Yeah. So eventually I was just like, okay, well, obviously Whelan does album covers. Like, he will commission his paintings for album covers. He did it for Sarah Thungle. So where do we go from here? I ended up going on his website probably over a year ago, maybe even 2 years ago, emailing, no response, emailing. Finally I got a response, and they're like, oh, you're interested in this image? And I said, yeah. It's like a secondary usage because it's already been on that Sword and Sorcery book. And eventually they said yes. It took a long time to like get it going because he is a very obviously busy artist. He's incredibly talented. He does not need to be commissioning his paintings to people like us, but he very kindly did. And that was a huge triumph for me, just kind of growing up with that kind of artwork completely surrounding my entire life. And I'm really happy about how much people are talking about it, because it was a lot of hard work to actually get it.
That took a long time.
It's so cool to have his art on the album, and think that, yeah, Sira Thungal have his art on their albums, and just to have that connection to a bunch of other classic metal bands that use his art and so on is really cool.
Yeah, well, there was that blog post from DMR Books where they talk about the history of Whelan in heavy metal. And I mean, if you kind of look, like if you take a step back and you look at the history of fantasy painters in heavy metal, I mean, obviously Frazetta has been used all over the place, like for Molly Hatchet and for, what's that bit, Wolf Mother, and for, Dust and stuff like that. And then if you look at, if you look at like Ken Kelly, who, another fantasy painter who's amazing, for people like Gates of Slumber, like that it's a big history and like a tradition that we really wanted to associate Smolder with.
Yeah.
As we mentioned fantasy literature, let's talk about the lyrics. I'm not an English native speaker, so lyrics sometimes go unnoticed. But as you're singing about a topic I can relate to, I'd like to know more about them. For example, the opening track, Alien of Garatorm, Sarah told me that's based on a female incarnation of the Eternal Champion from Michael Moorcock.
Yep.
Who is Alien of Garatorm. Spoiler alert!
Alien is one of the iterations of Eternal Champion. Essentially, so yeah, how do I properly contextualize the Eternal Champion universe? Like when Eternal Champion wakes up in another body. Like when Eternal Champion wakes up in Ilian.
Yeah, like it's the soul of Dorian that is taken and put into Ilian's body so she can basically come back to life and like get revenge.
Yeah, but it's not just for Dorian. Like Ilian, so she has a whole story arc where she is taking revenge on this evil army captain who ended up. How do I even put it in the context? It's hard to just like sum it up neatly. I mean, there's a lot going on. I tried to sum it up in the song as best as I could, but essentially, like, she is seeking revenge against Imril, who is this evil captain who ended up killing a lot of the villagers, like in the area that she's from, and ends up being possessed by Ariok, and Ariok is obviously like the elder god in the Michael Moorcock universe. One of them, obviously. Yeah, obviously. And so the story is of her killing Imril and saving what's his face's woman.
Dorian's
lady. Yeah. So, and then, you know, at the end of the story, like, the story is great because she's also traveling with another female warrior who's like very much like reminded me a lot of Brienne of Tarth, actually, from like the Song of Ice and Fire, which is like the Game of Thrones universe. And so, yeah, I don't know. I found it to be a really great, empowering story. I mean, I think all of the Eternal Champion stories are very empowering. All those characters are kind of, they've been put upon.
Tragic.
Yeah, all of them are very tragic and been put upon. And obviously the sword itself that Elric ends up yielding is a very like tragic instrument for him and for his victims. So yeah, I thought that iteration, Ilian, like, it's not as tragic a story. It's more empowering because she's not... she's not like possessed by the devil's sword, you know.
She's not possessed by the black sword.
Yeah, that was long-winded and poorly explained. Sorry.
I learned a lot.
Have you guys written Alien of Garatorm thinking of it as the opening act of a live set?
No. No, we didn't.
No. The song was already fully written by Colin and Kevin.
Yeah.
When they had joined the band, so it just ended up, like, the song itself is just huge and triumphant. It works really well as a beginning to the set and the album. So,
well, same with Voyage of the Sun Chaser. Both of those songs are really good openers and closers, just because they have a dynamic and quiet intro. And I think that when you're trying to get people's attention, it's really good to suddenly ease in and then just blow up in their faces. So both of those tracks have that really cinematic quality, which I personally love.
I asked this because I was listening to the album today again to prepare for the interview, and while listening I was thinking how good it would sound live.
Yeah, well, I mean, for context, the keyboard intro was something that Kevin wrote after the fact. So
Yeah, Colin or Kevin
or
wrote it.
yeah, Colin wrote. Sorry,
Yeah.
Colin wrote after the fact. So that part isn't played live. We don't know.
Could be, though.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we could integrate it in. It is a
as like
good
the walk-on thing, but
the walk on.
I do like it as just starting with those two heavy, low notes. It's just a bombastic opening.
Yeah.
I do think the right way to experience heavy metal is live. It always sounds, if a band is good and the sound is good in the venue, and if the audience is going nuts for it, and if there's a mosh pit, if you're at a heavier show. I know I got way more into heavy metal when I started going to more live shows and when I started going to festivals and so on. So we certainly want to be a powerful, tight live band.
Yeah, we practice a lot, despite being separated by an entire country. We practice a lot. So, and that's because like when we have time together, it's precious. It's very important.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, but we don't want to look like, hey, like we've played together a couple of times. Like we want to sound tight. We want to be cohesive. We are like a unit. So yeah, it's a lot of work goes into it for sure.
Mm-hmm. And it's clear anytime we do get together with Colin and Kevin that they're also putting in all that work because they are both really good and on the ball.
Yeah, they're
moment.
tight musicians.
Yeah, the moment we walk into the rehearsal space, it's like, oh, this is a real band. We can all play the parts perfectly, and it's going to sound good.
Yeah, we're not just the Dropbox band.
Yeah.
Fucking Dropbox band.
And this word woman, I think it's a very important song for you, Sarah, right?
Yeah, it really is. It's the first song that we wrote as Smolder. The character is Agnes de Chastelone. She was Robert E. Howard's female counterpart to Conan. Eventually, she became in comic books. She morphed into Red Sonja, which Red Sonja is a cool character, but not nearly as cool as Dark Agnes was. And it's particularly important to me. I used to have a radio show in Calgary when I lived there called Doom What Thou Wilt for several years at the campus radio station. And like my pseudonym on that show was Dark Agnes, just because I really identified with that character. And so that song has gone through so many different versions, just because the band started out as a hot mess and has now transformed into something that we're all very proud of. So to do it properly, it took a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of rewrites. It's really important to me because Vincent and I wrote it from a musical perspective. I wrote the drums, wrote the lyrics, and then finally, like in the current form it's in, I'm like, this is the perfect version of this song. This is like our anthem, and it's my personal anthem. So I probably have a little bit too much attachment to it.
We just talked about this word woman, so let's listen to it, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So next one is unusual song for Smolder, let's say, because it's faster. People are saying that's power metal, speed metal. So, and it's about Jon Snow from A Song of Ice and Fire. What can you tell us about Bastard Steel?
Oh, I fucking love that song. It's so hard to play live.
It's got those power metal D beats I love.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, that is also a Colin and Kevin contribution. Shon rewrote some of it, which I think altogether that one is more of a collaboration than any other song on the album.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the elements of the song were written by Colin and Kevin, and then the intro of it was actually from a version of like a slower version of the song that we thought about doing, but in the end we were like, no, we want to use the fast, like punch you in the face version.
Well, it's like our follow the like Blind Guardian.
Yeah, it's
it's like a follow
Guardian.
the blind kind of song, which like I think all of us are, none so more than Vincent, are Blind Guardian fanatics. Everybody in the band loves Blind Guardian. Shut the fuck up. Oh my god. Shit. But yeah, that song was funny because Colin brought the lyrics, and when I first saw them, I was kind of like, okay, like these have to be reworked quite a bit. And I ended up really agonizing over the lyrics, just because the song is so fast and the vocal melodies don't all match the guitars. And because it is so fast, I really have to focus when I'm singing that one. And not only that, but like the whole Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire, whatever you want to call it, universe, I think is like a pretty good allegory for the real world in a lot of ways. And I think that's why that fantasy series has exploded and like turned into this like international phenomenon, is because like it really reflects a lot of the social problems that the world has today. And so, yeah, that song, like when we finally got to the final version, a lot of it repeats itself, but then like shifts in really subtle ways. And I think it ended up working out really well. I love that song.
Yeah.
I hate playing it live, but I love
It's
it.
really fun to play.
I can only imagine you go on stage and then you say, we are Smolder, we play doom metal, and then start playing Busted Steel.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really say that we play doom metal.
Arcane Power Doom.
Yeah,
Yes.
Arcane Power Doom. That's the new the new phrase bandied about the office.
That's what we're, yeah.
Fuck. Yeah, we're.
It's good
Yeah.
to be dynamic, though. Again, it's good to have a variety of moods and speeds and styles represented. Otherwise, every song sounds the same and it gets boring.
Yeah, I mean, like I know that like straight up doom heads probably don't like us that much. Just because like we don't have that much in common, I think, from like a production standpoint as like a band like St. Vitus. But then if you listen to a song like Black God's Kiss, to me that's a very Reverend Bizarre infused track, and like we are very inspired by them, just like we're very inspired by Candlemass. And if you look at Candlemass, like they are epic doom. It's Epicus, Doomicus, Metallicus. But if you look at the shift between Candlemass's Epicus, Doomicus, Metallicus, and then you look at Chapter 6, like Chapter 6 is a fucking speed metal record. Like it's a speed, power, doom record. And I think that like a lot of people seem to kind of forget when they think about the context and history of doom metal that it is very intimately interlaced with heavy metal and with power metal. And that like if you look at a genre in particular like USPM is, I think, a merging of like all of those things.
Yeah, it's quite versatile.
Yeah, it's like a really versatile genre. Like a band like Brockus Helm or Warlord, like I mean, Warlord is like much more on the doom spectrum, obviously, like not the way that like old school Baltimore doom would be, but like they have so much of this similar sonic kind of themes, and like all these things exist under an umbrella. And I think that a lot of what we do in Smolder is to like force people to realize that, because it's an important it's important context in the history of heavy metal to like acknowledge that like doom isn't just, what it's popularly thought of now, which is like fucking recycled electric wizard riffs for stoner bros. Like it's not just that. Like it's so many other things.
And yeah, if you look at like it's the same thing if you look at a band like Exciter. They're considered a speed metal band, but then you look at a song like Iron Dogs. That's definitely not a speed metal song, And I think if you look at most albums that are called one single genre, the really interesting albums have that kind of variety. So
yeah, I think the only exception to that is black metal. Black metal is always black metal.
No, even there, I mean, my favorite black metal albums are the ones where they go into like punk rock and Motorhead riffs, and mix it up.
Immortals at the Heart of Winter. It's all black metal all the time.
Yeah, but I'm more into like Darkthrone and Catharsis or something.
Yeah, Darkthrone is a really good example of that. But I feel like
they're really
Darkthrone
dynamic, right?
Yeah, but like Darkthrone's weird because like it's like albums. Like they don't necessarily have like a variety of songs on a specific album, but then each album shifts. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, but that's why I love A Blaze in the Northern Sky. It's got like straight up punk rock
Underground
kind of stuff and yeah, just like old Motorhead stuff, and they're having fun.
Totally. That's a band that does not
like they don't
give two fucks about what you think.
It doesn't take itself too seriously. It's still serious, but
Yeah.
Even in, or I could list other black metal bands where like I like it when there's variety and dynamics. So something like Torture Chain, where they slow it way down and then they speed it up again, and keep things interesting. Because a lot of black metal albums are just tremolo clicking and blast beats for 50 minutes nonstop, and I get bored. Even though I love black metal, I'll get bored halfway through an album that doesn't have anything new going on. 30 minutes into it.
The next song is Voyage of the Sun Chaser, and like I said, I'm not an English native speaker, so I haven't realized what the song was about. But then I was listening while walking the dog and I had an epiphany, and then oh my god, it's fucking Dragonlance. And I am a Dragonlance fan. I have several books here. I didn't read every one of them, but I plan to. So Vincent, I know it was you who wrote the song, so what can you tell about Voyage of the Sun Chaser?
Yeah, I've been a Dragonlance fan since high school. It was like the first like fantasy series that I really got into and was obsessed with. I probably read more than 20 or 30 of the books during my time in high school. And when I read the short story Voyage of the Sun Chaser, it just immediately gripped me, and I wrote a song. Like that song was written probably a solid 9 or 10 years ago, and it was originally a very fast power speed metal song that just never ended up getting used in any of the projects that I was a part of. And
I remember when you brought that song, though, like when you brought it to me when we were jamming, and you were like, Vincent wrote the lyrics, and the first time that he gave them to me, I looked at them and I thought, holy shit, this is a great song. And I remember the very first time that I tried to sing them, like I nailed it. Yeah. And I remember Vincent looking at me and he was like, holy shit, that was perfect.
Yeah.
It fell together really, like it didn't fall together, but yeah, like that was one of those songs that I don't know, like I wish I had written. It's so good.
The next two are more mysterious to me because the last one, Black God's Kiss, I know what inspired it, but I don't have any additional information except for the title of the book. But let's talk about Shadowy Sisterhood first. What can you tell us about it?
That's the first fantasy story that I've written myself. That song really fell out of Vincent and I. It was shortly after the demo came out, and all of a sudden people cared about Smolder, and that was a bit of a shock. And like we were sitting in our jam space, and he said, "Oh, I have some riffs for a song," and I said, "Okay." And so he played them for me, and I said, "Okay." I think I started singing something. I think it was the opening line, "Evil sorceress clutches her staff," and this vocal melody instantly formed itself, and I remember listening to it and thinking, oh, okay, like something's happening. Like we're writing a song very quickly right now.
Yeah.
And I was looking at this book series called Enchanted World, and it's this great book series that came from the 80s. And basically it's a series where every single different book is about a mythical creature. So there's one on the history of ghosts, and one on dragons, and one on ogres and fairies and all these other types of things. And I was looking at the book on witches and wizards, and there was this really great Hungarian folk tale about this evil witch. And I was looking at it, and I was like, okay, there's elements of this story that I really like. And so it inspired me to write the actual story, which was, about this woman going to the forest and wanting to obtain powers from this witch. And little does the witch know that she's going that she wants the powers so that she can kill her. And I don't know why, but I had like the phrase shadowy sisterhood written down for some time. I wanted to write a song about a coven of witches without it being another Stoner Doom track. And eventually I realized that shadowy sisterhood should have some sort of ominous presence in that track without being the primary focus. And so currently, like, we're definitely going to write another song about shadowy sisterhood, or about, the group that kills her for what she's done. And so there will be a second part of that song somewhere. But yeah, that was an interesting one. It fell out real quick.
Yeah. Yeah, that one, like I mentioned earlier, it was originally like a 13-minute long song that was much slower, and there wasn't really much going on. It was much more like slower, drawn-out chords, like similar to Sirathungal by Reverend Bazaar. And yeah, when it came time to make it work on the album, I reworked a lot of it, and we wanted another song that was about like a female sword and sorcery character.
Well, we wanted one about Jirel of Jowry specifically.
Jirel of Jowry was another book that we wanted to write a song about.
That was an interesting one too, because I tried writing the lyrics to that song multiple times, and no matter what, I just could not get the pacing down. And I remember I have about 15 different versions of the lyrics for that song written in my lyric notebook, and every single one ended up getting crossed out. And I eventually said to Vincent, like, you need to write this song because I don't know what to do with it, and it's driving me crazy because we had been working on it for so long. And what he came back with is, again, he's just got this very like arcane mystic vibe to his songwriting, and I think that song necessitated that approach.
Yeah, it took me a few months to like hammer out all the lyrics to it and fit it in.
And you even did all the vocal lines too.
Yeah.
Yeah, which like I'm not used to.
I had it all mapped out. It was the same. It's the same way with Voyage of the Sun Chaser.
Yeah.
And, it worked out quite well. I'm really happy with it. So.
Yeah. It took a long time to get it where it's at, but now it's...
Yeah, that song went from one that was really frustrating to your favorite on the album, right?
Yeah, it took about a year straight. But, yeah.
Because, good stuff takes time, and it's better to take that time than to rush anything.
Yeah, fuck that
shit. And the lyrics itself, the story about Jirel of Jowry descending into hell to obtain a supernatural weapon to kill the conqueror of her castle. It's quite a dark and evil story. So, and
she's the original. She's the OG like lady sword and sorcery badass. Like she Robert E. Howard based Dark Agnes on her, and it's harder to find that book unless people talk about it. And I eventually bought this beautiful old paperback version, and it's just this woman on the cover, and we actually considered seeing if we could use that image for the album cover. It's the only other one that we considered for the album cover. It's a picture of this redheaded woman in a full suit of armor, and she's got all these magical horses kind of around her. I'm gonna go grab it. You guys keep talking.
Yeah, and the album cover depicts a scene from the story Blackguard's Kiss where Jyrell is in basically hell, just wandering through the plains, and this group of like horses, these white horses, just like run past her, and it's yeah.
Yeah, horses. I really identify with horses just from some of my family history. And yeah, it would have been a really cool album cover. I mean, she looks kind of like an elf on it, which is kind of silly, but the book itself is awesome. It's so dark and it's so fucking ominous. Mm-hmm. It needed to have a song written about it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that we may write about her in the future because there's 3 stories in the book about her. And it's like classic sword and sorcery is Pulp Fiction. So there's short stories that are then, put together. And so Conan, for example, there's hundreds of stories about Conan, but all of them have a beginning, middle, and end. Same with Jyrell of Jowry and with Dark Agnes, which is the sword woman. Like it's written in that pulp style. So there's more stories to be told from those books for sure.
Yeah.
Before I started this channel, I was listening only to the same old bands that I was a fan of, and I couldn't care less about new bands because I thought they weren't as good as the old ones. Then I had a kind of a reality shock when I missed Skullfist and Steel Wing on my hometown. And then I realized that I should pay attention to new bands because the old ones won't be here forever.
Yeah, no, that's a really good it's a good realization to have. I think that I work as a metal reviewer, and a lot of my time is spent listening to these bands. And I think what a lot of metalheads are missing out on is like the thrill of the hunt and the discovery. So when people think that new bands aren't as good as old bands, I mean, I did just say that no one's done Black Sabbath better than Black Sabbath. But I should probably put my foot back in my mouth and actually talk about the fact that there's constantly new bands that come out in heavy metal that are incredibly inspiring and strong. We talked about Cavalier, we talked about Iron Griffin. For us, like, new metal is very important. Like Deathua, their newest record was my favorite album of last year. I love the new Idle Hands. Speaking to new bands, like Crescent Shield is a huge influence. We love Eternal Champion. I think everyone does. For example, like in the black metal band or realm, like we love like Wampa Schnatz, and I love Havakrunu, and like Adam's a big fan of like Noisy Black Death, all sorts of shit.
Sure, we've got some great local bands here. We've got Adversarial and Tomb Mold, just right here in Toronto.
Sortoligia and Rough Spells and Pound Skull and Freeways and Possessed Steel, and like Toronto is a hotbed of like very talented people, and like we're very lucky to live here. Maybe not luck because we specifically moved here for this reason. But it was the best choice I think that we could have ever possibly made for this band and for our creativity, because being surrounded by talented people makes you up your game. It's cool that there's this whole movement of trad metal right now because we're very inspired by it, and we feel very much part of it.
Not only Toronto, but all of Canada, because you are the 4th band I interviewed for the podcast, and 2 others were also from Canada, Gatekeeper and Traveler.
Yeah, Canada's got a rich history of awesome metal bands. And again, even in this region, we've got Razor just down the road, and
Cauchemar from Montreal.
Sure, Sacrifice or a Toronto band, some real classics.
Pile Driver.
Yeah.
That's the historical stuff, but Ottawa, like Occult Burial is like fucking killer. Farrah White's awesome. There's the Black Tower is great. I'm hoping that they put out another record soon because that last one was cool. Like
Voivod are playing here next week.
It's fucking Voivod. Yeah.
We're proud of our Canadian metal heritage and all that.
Yeah, Canadian metal is where it's at, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's always been that way.
And I also had Anik as a guest on my Gimme Radio show in a Canada special, only Canadian bands. And it was an amazing episode. I think the best episode on my Gimme Radio show.
Yeah, Anik is she is a powerhouse. She does so much for Canadian metal. Like, she had that compilation come out recently. She's also got that great label, Temple of Mystery. She's been putting out the Pagan Altar reissues, which here's my little humble brag, but I got to write the exclusive liner notes for what? Because I fucking love Pagan Altar. But yeah, Anik is like, she does a lot for Canadian metal, and like Koshmar is obviously like very much a very important band. Oh yeah, we totally forgot to mention Cauldron. Fucking Cauldron.
Yeah,
Toronto homies. Same with Goathorn, you know. But yeah, like she's very talented, and if there's anyone that I look up to in the Canadian metal scene, it's Anik. Like, I can't imagine anyone doing more than she does.
You were playing Legions of Battle in May, Witch Hex, a festival focused on female-fronted heavy metal, in August, and were already confirmed on next year's Up Their Hammers. What are your expectations for these festivals, especially playing in Greece, a place we all learn to love for its history and mythology?
Oh man, I'm so excited
We're
about Greece.
quite stoked. Yeah,
It's so fucking cool.
based on our experience in Germany last year at Hammer of Doom, I couldn't be more excited to go back to Europe and
Yeah.
play for arguably the most dedicated and maniacs bands in the world.
Greek bands, like Greece is special. Like, I think that Greece has somehow even more intense than Canada and Finland, or equally, you know, maniacs about metal than Finnish people are. Yeah, Greece is going to be really interesting. I mean, like, we're really excited to play these festivals in the States. It's really cool. Like, I'm super stoked myself to play with Sirathongol and Liege Lord in particular, obviously. Witch's Hex is going to be great because fucking, like, Leather Leone, like the very iconic voice of Chastain, is going to be there, which is, for me, I love Chastain, so that's very exciting. And not only that, but like those tons of the bands that are playing that festival, like, are personal friends of ours. Like, we want to spend that weekend partying with our friends. But Greece is going to be, I'm sure, another world. And we're hoping to set up a bit of a tour around that. We'll see where that goes. We've been invited to play some shows, and we'll see what that looks like in the next, year.
Yeah, thankfully we have time to make some plans around that.
Yeah. That's when you know a festival has its shit together. They ask you to play a year in advance. It's like, hell yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the last question, is about the plans for the future, because I already mentioned all these festivals that you are booked for, but I imagine that there are plans going behind the scenes that we don't know yet because it was not confirmed. So what are you planning for the future?
We're gonna be recording in the summer.
Yeah.
For a split. And there's also another show that isn't announced yet that we'll be playing in August. Other than that, we're just gonna we've already started the writing process for the next album. So
yeah, we already have multiple songs.
A few songs that didn't make it onto this album.
All of us feel very energized and just affirmed, doing stuff for Smolder, because when people really care about your band, it just lights a fire under your ass.
Really, it's really good motivation.
It's great. It's so nice.
For sure.
Like, looking even at, yesterday, all day, we were all on our band chat. It's like every order that came in, I'd go in the band chat and be like, we're on order 55. And everyone would be like, holy shit. And it was like, order number 70. And like, that kind of stuff is just thrilling. It's so cool.
Yeah, by the end of the night, we were taking a drink every time a new order came in. It was
dangerous.
It was dangerous. This is why we all feel, I feel like shit today.
I also feel like
shit
today. I feel great.
Adam's great. He's responsible. But yeah, It was a good night. It's been great. I mean, we would do the band regardless of people caring about it, but people caring about it is really, really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I was about to ask, joking, when's the new album coming? But you
TBA.
Yeah.
I don't want to say anything because
No, we don't have.
we know exactly how long it takes to properly release an album. I mean, like, my history work-wise, I've worked in the music industry since I was 17 years old, and I've learned a lot about what that means for, like, managing Smolder. Just, you don't want to rush things, you know? Like, I think a lot of musicians kind of end up kind of falling flat and hurting themselves because they get really excited about their music and they just want everyone to see it and hear it. But the problem with that is that you only really get that one real opportunity to release an album, and you want to do it properly. Like you want to have it ready to go. You want to have it so that you actually love the cover art and it's not just a shitty scribble from your friend who charged you $50. Like you want to make sure that it's everything is done properly because it benefits the music and it also makes people take you more seriously. So, when it comes to the next album, like we're gonna do it just as carefully as we've done everything else because we want it to be good. We want it to be a worthy follow-up to Times of Obscene, Evil, and Wild Daring. And we want to harness the energy that we're feeling around the release of this album and bring it into a sustained pattern where we can play European festivals, we can play for large audiences, we can do all those things because it, when it works, it's just like such a special thing, and it's not something very many bands get to do, and we don't want to squander that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I just watched the Motley Crue movie, The Dirt, on Netflix. Take care when you reach that level.
We will never reach that level. Yeah.
Anybody know?
Yeah. We're famous. No, I mean we're not ever going to be famous. Like it's we don't really have illusions about that. Like my goal as the person who manages all of the band finances and organizes all of the press stuff and all that is, if we could break even, we'd be lucky. And I think that bands really need to strongly think about that as a goal. What we all do is an expensive hobby. We're all diehard heavy metal maniacs. We spend all of our money on shows, on traveling, on merch, on gear, and being a band is an extension of that. And if people care enough to help us subsidize that hobby, then that is more than what 99% of bands get. And we don't want to have unrealistic expectations. Like, we're not going to ever be big. And when I say big, I mean like a full-time touring band, the way that, let's say, like Ghost is a perfect example of a band that is making money, full-time money off their band. Like, we're never going to be at that status, and we're okay with that. We don't need to. We all have fulfilling lives and partners and hobbies that are not heavy metal, and we want to continue to enjoy those things.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe we could win some Junos.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we don't have any illusions about like how big our band will be. We're just gonna take it as it comes.
Yeah, I mean, relatively speaking, like we've gotten a lot of attention, but we're not going to be at like the Tribulation level. You know what I mean? Like touring several months a year or anything like that. We're just gonna try to see where it goes.
Guys, thank you so much for this interview. I think it will be the longest interview on the podcast.
Are you gonna use all of it? Cut us out.
Most of it, but
oh shit! Sorry.
That's great.
It was great talking with you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, and for caring and for helping us out so much. Like, we really appreciate it a lot, Anderson.